British food. It seems to have gained a terrible reputation in recent years online, and I cannot stand listening to this slander anymore. Therefore today I am starting a series of videos defending it, and we are starting with the festive special of British Christmas cake. And yes, it's January and I'm late, but that doesn't matter because this cake is also sometimes made for other celebrations, so I've called it Festive Fruitcake in my title. Now, the UK is not the only country to have a dedicated Christmas cake. For example, there's the Japanese strawberry Christmas cakes, but the British Christmas cake is a delicious mix of dried fruits and spices and can be left plain or decorated with marzipan and fondant icing. As someone who loves sugar, I obviously opt for the latter because I need that icing. Something we also put in Christmas cake is alcohol. I can't speak for every recipe, but my family uses sherry, and you feed it over a couple of months to enhance the flavour and keep it moist. As for the origins of Christmas cake, it was originally a plum porridge, and over time dried fruit, honey and spices were added to create something else you might have heard of called Christmas pudding. Now, eventually in the 16th century, the oats were removed and butter, flour and eggs were added to create a cake which richer families decorated with almond and sugar paste, and that is where we get our modern Christmas cake. Speaking of that almond and sugar paste, there is a long-standing tradition in some parts of the country of eating the cake without icing, but instead with cheese. This tradition is more common in the north of England and appears to have started in Yorkshire, where they eat Wallace and Gromit's favourite cheese of choice, Wensleydale. The earliest mention of this is from 1871, where Joseph Lucas wrote in his book Studies in Nidderdale the following.
On Christmas Eve, one Yule cake is given to each member of the family, along with a piece of Christmas cheese. As a rule, part of this is left for Christmas morning and eaten at the breakfast.
So now that we know how Christmas cake began, let's make one! This recipe was my grandmother's and has probably been passed down through generations, so you know it'll be good. You can follow along at home if you like, but you need to start the process in September or October if you plan to eat it at Christmas. You will need the following: 8 ounces of green country butter, 8 ounces of soft brown sugar, 1 tablespoon of golden syrup, 4 ounces of frozen flour, 6 ounces of plain flour, 4 eggs, half a teaspoon of nutmeg, 12 ounces of currants, 6 ounces of raisins, 2 ounces of ground almonds, a pinch of salt, 12 ounces of sultanas, 4 ounces of grated cherries, half a teaspoon of mixed spice, half a teaspoon of vanilla essence, 1 bottle of sherry, an 8 to 9 inch cake tin, apricot jam, icing sugar, 16 ounces of marzipan, 16 ounces of fondant or vegetable icing, oil butter greased in a tin, baking paper, newspaper, and metal pins. To begin, grease the tin with your oil or butter, and then line it with baking paper and trim off the excess. On top of this, you should fold up some newspaper and line the tin with that on the outside. You can hold it together with pins. If you don't do this, the cake will burn. Cream together the butter and sugar in a large bowl, as you need room for all of those ingredients, and then add in the eggs, sherry, vanilla essence, the pinch of salt, self-raising flour, plain flour, nutmeg, and mixed spice, and make sure to mix it after each ingredient. Now add the sultanas, raisins and currants, and mix carefully as you don't want them to go everywhere, and add the ground almonds. Chop up your cherries and mix everything together. In the original recipe, my grandmother used margarine instead of butter, as it was popular in the war, but now we use butter because it's better for you. Pour your mixture into the cake tin and put a dent in the middle of your spoon, as you don't want it to rise so that you have a flat surface to decorate. This way you won't waste any cake by cutting off the top to level it. Cook it in the oven at 140 degrees Celsius for 4 hours. When it's cooked, it should look something like this. Now you need patience. You need to wait a week to let it rest. And now that it has been a week, you need to feed it with 2 tablespoons of sherry. Keep doing this once a week, all the way until just over a week before Christmas. And now that that cake has been through that feeding process, it's time to do the marzipan. Take a couple of spoons of apricot jam and microwave it for 50 seconds and give it a stir until it's runny. You will use this to stick on the marzipan, and the reason we use apricot in particular is because it has a more neutral flavour than other jams. Put a bit of jam on the base of the dish or container that you'll be placing the cake on, so that it doesn't stick. Clean your work surface and sift some icing sugar onto it. You could use a large chopping board or something if you like. Place down your marzipan and coat it with a little icing sugar too so it doesn't stick. Roll it out into a circle until it looks like it'll fit onto your cake. You can hover it over the cake to check the size. You can add more icing sugar if it sticks to the rolling pin. Once it is the right size, put apricot jam on the cake with a pastry brush. If you don't have one, you could use a knife or a spatula. Place the marzipan on the cake and use your hand to flatten it out and stick it well onto the cake. Use your fingers to smooth it out on the sides, and then use a knife to cut off the excess marzipan. If you have one, you could use a flat tool to help smoothen out the surface, but if you don't have one, don't worry. Now you need to wait another week to let that dry. It should now be a day or two before Christmas, so the next step is to repeat what you did for the marzipan, but for the fondant. You could make your own fondant, but I don't see the point in doing that, so we just buy it from the shop. You may need to work the fondant a little with your hands if it's too hard from the cold. So roll it out to the size of the cake and add icing sugar if it gets too sticky. Once again, pat with your fingers and then a smoothing tool if you have one. Cut off the excess and then smoothen once more. You can patch up any holes with your excess fondant and a little water on your finger to make it stick. And finally, it's time to decorate. Now you can decorate however you want, but we bought these little Christmas-themed sugar decorations and lined them up on the cake. Stick them down with a little water, and there you have it, a delicious Christmas cake. I hope you can see now that this British food is actually lovely, and one of the many examples I will be showing you of our lovely cuisine. British food is unfairly put down these days, and I will be proving all of you naysayers wrong. A special thank you to my campers and glampers, to Neuroriba Fajita, HAP3D, Neo Chimera, Shadow XXE, and Numelia.